My wife is on her way. Get your stuff. Michael shouted those words as he ripped my clothes from the closet and threw them into the hallway. I could barely process what was happening. Dresses, blouses, shoes, everything flew through the air and landed on the floor as if it was worthless. The door slammed shut right in my face. I heard the deadbolt slide. My own son had just locked me out. On the other side of the wall, Jessica's footsteps echoed in the kitchen. She was in there, rummaging through my cabinets, taking my things, claiming everything. My hands were shaking. My heart was beating so hard it hurt. I didn't understand what I had done to deserve this. I didn't understand why my son, my only son, was treating me like I was a stranger, like I was trash. 2 hours later, after I had already left that apartment with the few things I could carry, Jessica's phone rang. It was the bank manager. She answered with that confident voice she always used, but within seconds, her tone changed. It broke. She started to stammer. "Honey," she said to Michael, her voice a thin thread. "Honey, all our accounts have been frozen. All of them. And the apartment." There was a silence. Michael snatched the phone from her. He spoke to the manager. His face turned pale. He hung up without a word. They looked at each other. And in that moment, they understood something. Something I had known from the beginning. Something they never bothered to find out. But it was already too late. Let me tell you how we got here. Let me tell you how my own blood became my worst enemy, and how I, without them knowing, always had the last word. 3 years ago, my life was completely different. I lived alone in a spacious apartment, full of light, full of memories. My husband had passed away 6 months earlier, and every corner of that house reminded me of him. His chair by the window, his coffee mug in the cupboard, the photos of our trips hanging on the wall. I spent my afternoons looking at those pictures, trying to keep his memory alive. But the loneliness was heavy. It was so heavy that some days I didn't even have the strength to get out of bed. I cried in silence. I ate little. I slept less. The house felt like a mausoleum, and I was the only ghost haunting it. That was when Michael called. His voice sounded worried, sweet, full of love. "Mom," he said, "you can't go on like this. Living alone, shut in that place. Jessica and I have been talking. We want you to come live with us. We can take care of you, keep you company. You don't have to be alone. We have plenty of room. Please, Mom, let us help you." When I heard those words, something inside me broke. I cried. I cried with relief. I thought my son was rescuing me. I thought I would finally have a family nearby, someone to share the mornings with, someone to ask me how I slept, someone to make me feel like I still mattered. I accepted immediately. I started packing my things. I sold some furniture. I donated clothes I no longer wore. I packed the most important photos in a box. Michael came to pick me up on a Saturday morning. He was driving a rented U-Haul. He helped me carry the boxes. He was smiling. He hugged me before we pulled away. "Everything is going to be okay, Mom," he told me. "You'll see. You're going to be with us." I believed him. God, how I believed him. The first few months were good. Jessica would cook, and I'd help her chop vegetables. Michael would get home from work, and the three of us would have dinner together. They'd ask me how my day was. I'd tell them about the walks I took in the nearby park, about the book I was reading, about the neighbor downstairs who always greeted me with a smile. I felt useful. I felt like part of something, but it didn't last. Little by little, things started to change. Jessica stopped smiling at me. She started making comments, small ones at first. "Eleanor, did you leave the lights on again? The electric bill is sky high." Or in the kitchen, "Don't use so much salt. I can't handle it with my blood pressure." When I cleaned the living room, she would check behind me and sigh. "Don't do it if you don't know how to do it right. Just leave it." I tried not to pay attention. I thought it was stress, that maybe Jessica was going through something difficult at work. But the comments became more frequent, sharper, more hurtful. Michael changed, too. He stopped hugging me when he got home. He stopped asking me how I was. During dinner, he'd just stare at his phone while I talked, as if my words were background noise, as if I didn't exist anymore. One night, I tried to tell him about a pain in my knee. He didn't even look up. "Uh-huh," he muttered. Jessica looked at him and smiled. That smile chilled me to the bone. One afternoon, while I was washing the dishes, I heard them talking in their bedroom. The door was slightly open. I didn't mean to listen, but their voices carried clearly to the kitchen. "I can't take it anymore, Michael," Jessica was saying in that sharp tone she used when she was furious. "We have no privacy. She's always here, meddling, asking questions, taking up space. This isn't what we signed up for." Michael sighed. "I know, babe, but she's my mother. What do you want me to do?" Jessica laughed, a bitter laugh. "Well, send her back to her place, or to a nursing home. I don't know, but she can't stay here anymore." My hands trembled under the soapy water. The plate I was holding slipped and clattered in the sink. I held my breath. I waited. No one came out to see what had happened. No one asked if I was okay. I dried my hands slowly. I walked out of the kitchen. I went to my room. I closed the door. I sat on the bed, and I cried in silence. I cried for the son I thought I had. I cried for the family that never was. I cried for myself, for being so naive, so stupid, so blind. After that night, everything got worse. Jessica stopped pretending. She no longer spoke to me with fake politeness. She ignored me. She'd walk past me as if I were a piece of furniture. When I came into the living room, she'd change the channel without asking. When I opened the fridge, she'd sigh heavily. One day, I made soup for the three of us. It was a recipe Michael used to love as a kid. I left it on the stove, hoping he'd be happy when he got home from work. But when he served himself a bowl, Jessica looked at it with disgust. "Soup again?" she said. "Can't you cook something normal?" Michael took one spoonful and put it down. "It's too salty, Mom. I can't eat it." He pushed the bowl toward the center of the table. Jessica smiled. They ordered takeout. They ate right in front of me without offering me anything. I just sat there, staring at my bowl of soup, feeling something inside me break a little more. The insults started soon after. At first, they were indirect. Jessica would tell Michael, loud enough for me to hear, that old people lose their minds, that they get clumsy, that they're a burden. Michael would nod. Sometimes he'd laugh. He never defended me. Not once. Then the insults became direct. One day, I tripped over a box in the hallway. Jessica was right there. She looked at me with disgust. "Watch it, you useless old woman. You're going to break something, and we'll have to take care of you like a baby." I felt tears burn my eyes, but I didn't cry. Not in front of her. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. Michael started coming home late. Very late. Some days, he didn't even eat dinner at home. When I asked him if everything was okay, he'd look at me, annoyed. "I'm tired, Mom. I don't feel like talking." Jessica was always nearby, watching, enjoying every hurtful word that came out of his mouth. It was as if she had reprogrammed him, as if the son I knew had disappeared, and in his place was a stranger who hated me. One afternoon I found my photos thrown in a box next to the trash. They were photos of my husband, of Michael, as a child, of our family. I pulled them out with trembling hands. I went to find Jessica. She was in the living room, watching TV. "Why are my photos in here?" She didn't even turn to look at me. They were in the way. "This isn't a museum. If you want to keep old junk, do it in your room." I clutched the photos to my chest. I felt a deep rage. But again, I said nothing. I swallowed the words. I swallowed the humiliation. I put the photos in my suitcase, the same suitcase I had brought the first day, the one I never fully unpacked, as if a part of me always knew this wouldn't last. The weeks passed. The tension in the house was unbearable. I tried to make myself invisible. I started taking long walks. For hours, I'd sit in the park and watch the pigeons. Sometimes I'd stay there until it got dark. Anything to not be in that apartment. But I always had to go back. I had nowhere else to go. Or so I thought. That's what they thought, too. One Saturday morning, Jessica walked into my room without knocking. I was sitting on the bed, reading. She stood in the doorway, her arms crossed. "I need you to get your things out of the hall closet," she said coldly. "We're going to use it for other things." I looked up. What things? I asked. That's not your business, she snapped. Just get them out. Today. I got up slowly. I walked to the closet. I opened the door. There were my coats, my scarves, my winter shoes. I took them out, one by one. Jessica watched me with that cold smile I hated so much. Hurry up, she said. I don't have all day. That night, Michael and Jessica argued. I was in my room, but the walls were thin. I can't take it anymore, Jessica screamed. You have to decide. It's her or me. Michael tried to calm her down. Give it time, babe. We'll find a solution. What solution? She asked. Send her to a home? Find her a room somewhere? I don't care. But she has to get out of here. Now. I lay down in bed. I stared at the ceiling. And in that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for them to throw me out like a dog. I wasn't going to beg for love where there was none. But I wasn't going to just leave either. Not after everything I had endured. Not after everything they didn't know. I had a plan. I'd had one from the very beginning. I was just waiting for the right moment, and that moment was coming. The next morning, Jessica cornered me in the kitchen. We need to talk, she said. Michael agrees. This isn't working. You need to find another place. We'll help you with some money at first, but you can't stay here anymore. I looked her in the eyes. For the first time in months, I didn't look away. And what does Michael say? I asked. Jessica smiled. He says the same thing. He just doesn't have the guts to tell you. But I do. So start looking. You have 2 weeks. I nodded slowly. All right, I said. She looked surprised. Just like that? She asked. Just like that, I replied. I turned around and walked out of the kitchen. My heart was beating fast, but my mind was clear, crystal clear. I knew what I had to do. I just needed to wait a little longer. Just a little longer, and everything would explode. They had no idea what was coming. They had no idea who I really was. But they were about to find out. 3 days passed since that conversation in the kitchen. 3 days where Jessica looked at me with a triumphant smile every time we passed each other. 3 days where Michael avoided my gaze completely. He knew. He knew they were kicking me out. He knew his wife had given me an ultimatum. And he did nothing. He said nothing. That hurt more than any insult, more than any contempt. The silence from my own son was a knife twisting deeper every day. I kept to my routine. I got up early. I made coffee. I went for a walk. I came back. I read in my room. I ate a simple dinner. I went to bed. But inside, everything had changed. I was no longer the same broken woman who cried in silence. Now there was something different. Something cold. Something that had been buried for years and was finally waking up. Rage, clarity, the certainty that I would not leave here like a loser, not without teaching them a lesson they would never forget. On Thursday afternoon, while they were out, I opened my nightstand drawer. I took out a yellow folder I had kept since the day I moved in with them. Inside were all the documents. The documents Michael never asked to see. The documents Jessica assumed didn't exist. I ran my fingers over the pages. Deeds, titles, bank statements, all in my name, all perfectly legal, all untouchable. I smiled. It was a small, bitter smile, but a smile nonetheless. They thought I was a foolish old woman. They thought they could walk all over me without consequences. How wrong they were. That night at dinner, Jessica attacked again. Eleanor, it's been almost a week. Have you looked for a place? Michael chewed in silence, his eyes glued to his plate. Yes, I lied. I've been looking at a few options. Jessica raised an eyebrow. Good. Because you only have a few days left. We don't want this to drag on any longer than necessary. I nodded. Of course, I understand. She smiled, satisfied. Michael kept eating as if nothing was wrong, as if he wasn't kicking his own mother out onto the street, as if I hadn't given him everything, my whole life, all my love, all my effort, and he was repaying me like this, with cowardice, with silence, with betrayal. The next day, Friday, everything changed. I had gone for my usual walk, but this time I went downtown. I went into a small cafe and ordered a tea. I took out my phone. I dialed a number I had saved for weeks. It was answered on the second ring. Law offices of David Ramirez. Good morning. Hello? I said, my voice firm. This is Eleanor Hayes. We spoke about a month ago. I need you to proceed with everything. Now. There was a brief pause. Understood, Mrs. Hayes. Are you sure? Completely sure, I replied. Perfect. I'll start the process today. Everything will be in motion within 48 hours. I appreciate it, I said. I hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand. The tea was getting cold on the table. But I felt more alive than ever. Stronger. More certain. There was no turning back now. I had crossed the line. And they still had no idea. When I got back to the apartment, Jessica was in the living room on the phone, laughing. She was talking to someone about a dinner, about a party, about how great things were now. I watched her from the hallway. She didn't even notice I had come home. I went to my room. I closed the door. I sat on the bed. I took a deep breath. Just a little longer. Just a little longer, and it would all be ready. Saturday morning, Michael left early. He said he had things to do. Jessica stayed home, as always, monitoring my every move. I was in the kitchen making tea when she appeared. Today's the day, she said, arms crossed. What day? I asked without turning around. The day you give us a definitive answer. When are you leaving? I turned around slowly. I looked her in the eyes. Soon, I said. Very soon. She frowned. That's not an answer. Give me a date. I don't want this to keep dragging on. I'm going to give you something better than a date, I replied calmly. I'm going to give you a surprise. Jessica looked at me, confused. What are you talking about? You'll see, I said. You'll see. She opened her mouth to respond, but just then, her phone rang. She pulled it from her pocket. She looked at the screen. Unknown number. She answered, annoyed. Yes. Her expression changed. The color drained from her face. What? No, that's not possible. There must be a mistake. Her voice was trembling. I backed away slowly, leaving her there in the kitchen, the phone pressed to her ear. I went to my room. I closed the door. I sat on the bed. And I waited. I waited for her to process what she had just been told. I waited for the perfect world she had built on my back to start crumbling. 10 minutes passed. 15. Then I heard fast footsteps in the hallway. The front door opened. Michael was home. Jessica ran to him. Her voice was shrill, desperate. Michael, you have to call the bank, now. They're saying all our accounts are frozen. All of them. I can't access anything. What? Michael's voice was confused. That's impossible. It has to be a mistake. It's not a mistake, she screamed. I just spoke to the manager. He said there's a legal order, that someone started a proceeding. Michael, what's going on? Silence. A heavy silence. Then I heard his footsteps. He was dialing a number, talking to someone. His voice was tense. Yes, this is Michael Hayes. I need to know what's happening with my accounts. What do you mean, frozen? On whose order? Another pause. Eleanor Hayes? But that's my mother. What does she have to do with this? His voice rose. What do you mean the apartment is in her name? That can't be. We live here. We pay for everything. What do you mean it was never in our name? I got up from the bed. I opened the door. I walked into the hallway. Michael was in the living room, pale, the phone in his hand. Jessica was next to him, her eyes wide. They both stared at me. What did you do? Michael whispered. I looked at him without blinking. I did what I had to do, I said calmly. Protect myself. Jessica took a step toward me. You're crazy. You can't do this. Of course I can, I replied. This apartment is mine. It always was. The accounts are in my name. They always were. You just assumed I was a foolish old woman who didn't know anything. But you were wrong. Michael shook his head. No, this isn't happening. Mom, you can't. Of course I can, I repeated. And I did. I called my lawyer. I started the legal process. I froze the accounts. And now comes the best part. The eviction. You have 30 days to leave this place. My place. Jessica let out a hysterical laugh. You're insane. We're not leaving. You have no right. I have every right, I said coldly. And if you don't leave peacefully, the police will come and remove you forcibly. Michael sank onto the sofa. He covered his face with his hands. Jessica looked at him. Then she looked at me. Say something, Michael. Don't just sit there. Do something. But Michael said nothing. He did nothing. Because he finally understood. He understood that he had underestimated the woman who gave him life, and now he was going to pay the price. Jessica couldn't stand still. She was pacing the living room like a caged animal. Michael was still on the sofa, head in his hands, in complete silence. I remained standing in the hallway, watching them. Waiting. I knew this was just the beginning. I knew the worst was yet to come. And a part of me, a dark part that had been dormant for years, was enjoying every second of their desperation. This can't be legal, Jessica said suddenly, spinning toward me, her eyes bright with rage. There has to be something we can do. Some appeal. Some way to stop this. I smiled without humor. You can try, but it's going to cost you a lot. I hired the best lawyer in the city. Everything is in order. Everything is legal. Everything is documented. She clenched her fists. You're a damn snake. All this time pretending to be the helpless old lady, the poor widow. And it turns out you're a manipulator. I took a step closer. A manipulator? I repeated slowly. A manipulator because I protected what's mine? Because I wasn't stupid enough to just hand everything over to you? You used me. You humiliated me. You treated me like garbage. And now that you find out I'm not as dumb as you thought, I'm the bad guy. How convenient. Michael finally lifted his head. His eyes were red. Mom, he whispered, how could you? I'm your son. I looked at him without flinching. Exactly. You're my son, and you still treated me worse than a dog. You threw me out. You threw my clothes in the hallway. You locked the door in my face. And now you ask me how I could? The right question is, how could you? He looked down. He had no answer. Because there was no answer that could justify what they had done to me. Jessica pulled out her phone. I'm calling my father. He knows lawyers. We're going to fight this. Go ahead, I said calmly. Call whoever you want, but I'm warning you. Every day you spend in this apartment after the deadline is going to cost you $500 per day. That's what the eviction order states. Jessica stopped dialing. She looked at me with pure hatred. $500 a day, I repeated. Multiply that by 30 days, by 60, by 90. Do the math. How long do you think you can afford that with your accounts frozen? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Michael stood up slowly. Mom, please. There has to be another way. We can talk. We can fix this. Now you want to talk, I asked bitterly. Now that it's convenient for you. Now that you've discovered you need me. But when I needed you to listen, when I needed respect, where were you? Allowing me to become nothing. And now you come to me saying we can talk. It's too late, Michael. Far too late. I turned and walked back to my room. Behind me, I heard Jessica's choked sob. I heard Michael trying to calm her. I heard their voices blend into a chaos of desperation and rage. I closed the door. I sat on the bed. And for the first time in months, I took a deep breath. I felt peace, a strange, cold peace, but peace nonetheless. I wasn't scared anymore. I didn't feel small. I was no longer the victim. Now they were. And while I felt no pleasure in it, I felt justice. I felt that things were finally where they needed to be. I didn't have dinner with them that night. I stayed in my room. I heard them arguing late into the night. I heard Jessica crying. I heard Michael making call after call, looking for help, looking for some way out. But there was none. I had made sure of that. I had worked with David for weeks. We had reviewed every detail, every possible loophole, every way they could attack, and we had closed every door. There was no escape. There was no way to reverse this. It was final. The next day, Sunday, I got up early. I made coffee. I sat in the kitchen. Michael appeared a short time later. He had deep, dark circles under his eyes. He hadn't slept. He sat across from me without saying a word. We sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, he spoke. When did you plan this? His voice was barely a whisper. From the beginning, I answered. From the day I moved in here. He looked at me, confused. But you wanted to come. You accepted. I nodded. Yes, I accepted. Because I was lonely. Because I had just lost your father. Because I thought my son loved me. But I wasn't naive. I put the apartment in my name. I put the accounts in my name. I did all of that just in case. One day, things went wrong. And look, they went wrong. Worse than I ever imagined. Michael closed his eyes. I didn't want things to be this way. Jessica was pressuring me. She wanted space. She wanted privacy. I laughed. A joyless sound. You just what, Michael? You just obeyed. You just let her treat me like garbage. You just allowed her to humiliate me. You just kicked me out of my own house. Because yes, even if you didn't know it, this was always my apartment, not yours, not Jessica's, mine. He opened his eyes. There were tears. Forgive me, Mom. Please, forgive me. I looked at him for a long time. I saw the boy he had been, the teenager who hugged me when he was scared, the young man who promised he would always take care of me. And then I saw the man he had become. A weak man. A man who chose a cruel woman over his own mother. A man who didn't deserve my forgiveness. Not yet. I don't know if I can forgive you, Michael, I said finally. Not now. Maybe someday. But not now. The damage is done. The words have been said. The actions can't be erased. He nodded slowly. I understand. But are you really going to kick us out? Are you really going to do this? I looked him in the eyes. Yes, I am. Because if I don't, you will never learn. You will never understand that actions have consequences. You will never value what you have until you lose it. So yes, Michael, I'm kicking you out, and you're going to have to find another place. You're going to have to start from scratch, just like I had to when your father died, just like I had to when you threw me out. Now it's your turn. Jessica came into the kitchen at that moment. She was disheveled. Her eyes were swollen. She looked at us both. Did you beg her already, Michael? Did you plead with her to let us stay? How pathetic. Michael looked down. Jessica walked toward me. Listen to me, you old woman. This isn't over. I'm going to fight this. I'm going to find a way to take this apartment from you. I'm going to prove you're incompetent. That you're not in your right mind. That you need a legal guardian. And when I do, I'm going to put you in the worst nursing home I can find. I smiled. Try it. But I'm warning you. If you try to declare me incompetent, I will fight back. And I have proof. Recordings. Messages. Witnesses. I have everything documented. Every insult. Every humiliation. Every moment you treated me like I was less than human. So go ahead, Jessica. Try to play that game. But I assure you, you will lose. And when you lose, you won't just lose the apartment. You'll lose any chance of getting out of this with any dignity. Jessica turned pale. She took a step back. Michael grabbed her arm. Let it go, Jessica. We've already lost. She looked at him with rage. You're giving up that easily? He nodded. There's nothing to do. She's right. She has everything. We have nothing. Jessica tore her arm from his grasp. She looked at me one last time. Her eyes were full of hate, but also fear, because she finally understood. She understood that I wasn't the victim. I never was. I was the one with the power, and now that power was going to crush them. The following days were strange. There was a tension in the air so thick you could almost touch it. Michael and Jessica moved through the apartment like ghosts. They avoided looking at me. They avoided talking to me, but I felt them. I felt their hateful stares when I walked by. I felt them whispering when they thought I couldn't hear. I could feel the panic growing inside them with every passing hour. And while I took no pleasure in watching them suffer, I didn't feel pity either. They had dug their own grave. Now they had to lie in it. Tuesday morning, Michael left early. I heard the door close before dawn. Jessica stayed in the bedroom all day. She didn't even come out to eat. I took the opportunity to make some calls. I spoke with David, my lawyer. He confirmed that everything was moving forward as planned. The eviction process was underway. The court order would arrive in less than a week. The bank accounts would stay frozen until the property issue was resolved. And since I was the sole legal owner, that meant they would stay frozen indefinitely. Unless, of course, Michael and Jessica decided to leave peacefully. But knowing Jessica, I knew that wouldn't happen. She was proud, stubborn, she would fight until the end, and that would only make things worse for them. That afternoon, the doorbell rang. I opened it. It was a courier with a large envelope. "Sign here, please." I signed. I took the envelope. I closed the door. I opened it slowly. Inside was the official eviction notice, a legal document stamped with the judge's name, the deadline, the consequences if they didn't comply. I read the whole thing. Everything was perfect. Everything was in order. I walked to Michael and Jessica's room. I knocked on the door. No one answered. I knocked again. Finally, Jessica's voice came from inside. "What do you want?" "I have something for you," I said. There was a silence. Then the door opened. Jessica was there, her hair a mess, her eyes red. She looked at me with contempt. "What is it?" I held out the envelope. "This, the official notice. You have 25 days starting today." She snatched it from my hands. She tore it open. She read it. Her face went from anger to panic in a matter of seconds. 25 days, she whispered. No, this can't be real." "It's very real," I said, "and I suggest you start looking for a place. Because when the deadline hits, if you're still here, the police will come, and they will remove you, with or without your things." Michael appeared behind her. He took the document from her hands. He read it. His face fell. "Mom, this is too much. We can't find a place in 25 days. We don't have any money. We don't have access to our accounts. How are we supposed to do this?" "That's not my problem," I replied coldly. "You gave me 2 weeks to leave. I'm giving you 25 days. I'm being more generous than you were with me." Michael shook his head. "We can't. We just can't." "Then you'd better start calling family, friends, whoever. Because the clock is ticking. And when day 25 arrives, this is over. With or without you, inside." I turned and went back to my room. Behind me, I heard the door slam. I heard yelling, crying, accusations. Michael blamed Jessica. Jessica blamed Michael. They both blamed me. But neither of them blamed themselves. Neither of them recognized that this was the result of their own actions, of their cruelty, of their arrogance. And that told me everything I needed to know. They hadn't learned a thing. They still saw themselves as the victims. But reality would hit them soon, and it would be a devastating blow. That night, I went for a walk. I needed fresh air. I needed to get away from that apartment, so full of tension and bitterness. I walked to the park. I sat on my favorite bench, the same one where I used to sit when all this began, the same one where I had cried so many times in silence. But I wasn't crying now. Now I looked at the dark sky and felt something different. I felt power. I felt control. I felt like my life finally belonged to me again. And even though the road here had been painful, even though I had lost my son in the process, I knew I had made the right decision. Because if I didn't stand up for myself, no one else would. Someone sat down next to me. I turned. It was Sharon, my neighbor from the next building, a woman in her 60s, with gray hair and a kind smile. We had become friends over the last few months. She had witnessed my suffering. She had listened to me vent. She had seen how Michael and Jessica treated me. And more than once, she had told me I deserved better. "Eleanor," she said softly, "how are you?" I smiled at her. "I'm okay, Sharon. Better than I've been in a long time." She nodded. "I heard what happened. The whole building is talking about it." "I'm not surprised," I said. "News travels fast." Sharon touched my hand. "You did the right thing. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. They treated you horribly. They threw you out like you were trash. And now they're paying for it. It's justice. Pure and simple." "Thank you, Sharon," I said softly. "Sometimes I feel like I was too harsh, that I should have given them another chance." She shook her head firmly. "No. You gave them enough chances. Every day you endured their insults was a chance. Every day you swallowed your pain was a chance. They didn't take it. They chose to treat you badly, and now they have to live with the consequences. Don't feel guilty, Eleanor. You're a strong woman, a survivor, and you're going to come out of this even stronger. Her words comforted me. They reminded me why I had made this decision. They reminded me I wasn't alone, that there were people who valued me, that there were people who saw my truth. And that was enough. I went back to the apartment an hour later. Michael was in the living room, sitting on the sofa with a laptop open. He was looking for apartments for rent. He scrolled through page after page. They were all too expensive. They all required deposits they couldn't pay. They all asked for references they didn't have. I watched him from the hallway. He looked defeated. Small. Nothing like the man who, just days ago, had screamed at me to get my stuff. Nothing like the man who had thrown my clothes in the hallway like garbage. Now he was the one with no way out. Now he was the one feeling the weight of desperation. And while a part of me felt pity, a larger part felt this was necessary, that this was what had to happen for him to understand, for him to grow up, for him to become the man he should have been from the beginning. Jessica came out of the bedroom. She saw me standing in the hallway. She stopped. We looked at each other for a long moment. You're waiting for us to be dragged out. You're waiting for us to be humiliated in public. You're waiting for us to be on the street. Is that what you want? I didn't answer. I just looked at her. Because the truth was, I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't want them to suffer forever, but I didn't want them to get off tangent-free, either. I wanted them to learn, to feel, to understand what they had done. And if that required them to hit rock bottom, then so be it. Jessica took a step closer. Her voice changed. It softened. Please, Eleanor. I'm begging you, don't do this. We can change. We can be better. Give Michael another chance. He's your son, your only family. Are you really going to destroy him over pride? I looked at her steadily. This isn't pride, Jessica. This is dignity. This is respect. This is what I should have done after the very first insult. But I was weak. I was tolerant. I was the mother who forgives everything because she loves her son. And look where that got me. It got me in the hallway with my clothes on the floor. It got me treated like trash in my own home. So, no, I'm not stopping this. Not out of pride, but because it's the right thing to do. Because if I don't, you will never learn, and I will never get my peace back. Jessica opened her mouth to answer, but she said nothing. There was nothing to say. I turned around and went to my room. I closed the door. I lay back on the bed. I stared at the ceiling, and I thought about everything that had happened, about everything that was still to come, about what my life would be like when this was all over. Because one thing was certain. When Michael and Jessica left, I wouldn't be living here anymore, either. This apartment was full of bitter memories, full of pain, full of betrayal. No. When this was all over, I would leave, too. I would sell this place. I'd buy something smaller, something quiet, something that was just mine, and I'd start over. But this time, I'd start by being true to myself, without sacrificing my dignity, without letting anyone walk all over me, without ever forgetting this lesson. Never again. The days passed slowly. Every morning, I crossed a date off the calendar in my room. 23 days, 22 days, 21. Time was running out, and Michael and Jessica were still in the apartment, growing more desperate, sinking deeper into their own trap. I watched them from a distance. I saw them making calls. I saw them arguing. I saw them cry. And even though something inside me twisted with guilt, I didn't give in. I couldn't. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was for all the women who stay silent, for all the mothers who endure, for all the people who let themselves be trampled because they don't know they have power. I had discovered my power, and I wasn't letting it go. One afternoon, while I was making tea in the kitchen, Michael approached me. He was holding a folder. He looked nervous. "Mom, I need to talk to you." I looked at him without saying anything. He opened the folder. He took out some papers. He put them on the table. I ran the numbers. If we sell the car, if I pawn a few things, We could scrape together about $3,000. We can rent something small with that, something temporary. But I need you to unfreeze just one of the accounts. Just one, so we can make the deposits, so we can get started, please. I looked him in the eyes. And Jessica? Is she on board with this? He looked down. She doesn't want to leave. She still thinks we can fight this, that we can find some lawyer to reverse it. But I get it now. I know there's no turning back. I just want this to be over as painlessly as possible. I took the papers. I looked them over. They were listings for apartments. All small. All in distant neighborhoods. All much cheaper than this place. Michael had done his homework. He had looked for real options. He was trying. For the first time in all of this, he was actually trying. I sighed. I'll think about it, I said finally. But I'm not promising anything. If I decide to unfreeze an account for you, it will be with conditions. And if Jessica keeps up her attitude, if she keeps fighting, if she tries to sabotage this, the deal is off. Understood? He nodded quickly. Yes. Yes. Understood. Thank you, Mom. Thank you. He hurried out of the kitchen, as if he was afraid I'd change my mind. I was left alone with the papers. I read them again. I felt something strange, something I didn't expect to feel. Sadness. Sadness that my son was in this position. Sadness that our relationship had come to this. Sadness that it all could have been different, if only he had chosen differently. But I also felt something else. I felt hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, he was learning. That maybe this shock was what he needed to wake up. That night, I called David. I told him about Michael's proposal. David was direct. Eleanor, legally, you can do whatever you want. It's your accounts, your money. But I advise you to be careful. If you unfreeze an account and they use that money to hire a lawyer and fight, it could complicate your life. Not much, because the case is solid, but they could drag it out, make it more exhausting. I thought about it for several minutes. Finally, I decided. I'm going to unfreeze one small account, the one with about $5,000, enough for them to rent a place and move, but only if they sign a document agreeing to vacate voluntarily and waiving any future claims on the apartment. David laughed on the other end of the line. You're tough, Eleanor, but smart, very smart. I'll prepare that document first thing tomorrow. The next afternoon, David arrived at the apartment with the document. Michael and Jessica were in the living room. They tensed up when they saw the lawyer. David introduced himself with cold professionalism. Good afternoon. I'm David Ramirez, Mrs. Eleanor Hayes' attorney. I have a proposal. If you sign this document, in which you agree to vacate the property voluntarily and waive all future legal claims to it, Mrs. Hayes will unfreeze an account containing $5,000. That money will allow you to rent a new place and move in an orderly fashion. If you do not sign, the eviction process continues as planned, and there will be no financial assistance of any kind. Jessica stood up immediately. This is blackmail. It's illegal. We're not signing anything. David looked at her, unfazed. It's not blackmail, ma'am. It's an offer. You have the right to refuse it. But you also have to understand that without that money, with no access to your accounts, and with an eviction already in process, your options are extremely limited. Michael looked at the document. Then he looked at me. You'd really do this? You'd really give us that money if we sign? I nodded. Yes, I would. Because even though I'm angry, even though you hurt me deeply, I don't want to see you on the street. I want you to leave, to start over, to learn. But I don't want to destroy you completely. So yes, Michael. If you sign, I'll unfreeze the account. And you can leave with some dignity. Jessica shook her head. No, I'm not signing. This is humiliating. I'd rather fight. Michael grabbed her arm. Jessica, that's enough. We can't fight. We have nothing to fight with. This is the best offer we're going to get. We have to take it. She looked at him with rage. You're okay with this? You're just going to let your mother humiliate us like this? He sighed. It's not humiliation, Jessica. It's a consequence of what we did, of how we treated her. And if we don't accept this, we're going to end up worse off. Much worse. So please, just sign. Jessica stared at him for a long time. Then she looked at the document. Then she looked at me. Her eyes were full of hate, but also defeat. Finally, with a trembling hand, she took the pen. She signed. Michael signed after her. David collected the document. Perfect. This will be filed. As of now, you have 15 days to vacate voluntarily. Mrs. Hayes will unfreeze the account tomorrow morning. Have a good afternoon. David left. I remained standing in the living room. Michael and Jessica didn't move. The silence was crushing. Finally, Michael spoke. Thank you, Mom. I know we don't deserve your help. I know we don't deserve anything. But thank you. I didn't answer. I just nodded. I turned and went to my room. I closed the door. I sat on the bed, and I let out the breath I had been holding. It was done. The document was signed. In 15 days, they would be gone, and I would be free. Free of them. Free of the pain. Free of it all. The next few days were quieter. Michael spent all his time looking for apartments, organizing the move, selling things. Jessica stayed locked in the bedroom most of the time. When she did come out, she avoided my gaze. We didn't talk. We didn't cross paths. It was like we were living in parallel worlds. And that was fine. It was easier that way. Because every conversation, every look, was a reminder of the damage. And I'd had enough. One morning, while I was having coffee in the kitchen, Jessica came in. She stood by the door. She didn't say anything at first. Then, in a low, almost inaudible voice, she spoke. I never thought it would come to this. I looked up. I looked at her. She was avoiding my eyes. Neither did I said calmly. She nodded. I know I treated you badly. I know I was cruel. And I know nothing I say can change that. But I want you to know it wasn't personal. I just didn't know how to handle the situation. I felt invaded. I felt like I had no space. And instead of talking about it, I attacked you. And that was wrong. I looked at her for a long moment. It wasn't a full apology. It wasn't enough, but it was something. It was the first acknowledgement of her wrongdoing. And while it didn't erase anything, it at least showed some humanity. Thank you for saying that, I replied. But it doesn't change anything. The damage is done. The words remain. The actions remain. And while I appreciate that you at least recognize it, I can't forgive it. Not now. Maybe never. She nodded. I understand. I just wanted you to know. She left the kitchen. I was left alone with my coffee. I thought about her words. I thought about whether I could ever forgive her. Forgive Michael. And the answer was uncertain. Maybe with time. Maybe with distance. Maybe never. But what I did know was that I wouldn't forget. I would never forget how they made me feel, how they diminished me, how they erased me. And that memory would be my shield, my reminder, my lesson to never again let anyone treat me like that. Never again. Moving day arrived faster than I expected. There was a moving truck parked in front of the building. 2 men were carrying boxes up and down. Michael was coordinating everything, his voice tired. Jessica supervised without saying much. I stayed in my room most of the time. I didn't want to be in the way. I didn't want my presence to make things more awkward than they already were. But every so often, I'd come out and see the apartment emptying, see the furniture disappear, see the walls become bare. And I felt something strange. A mix of relief and melancholy. Relief that this was finally ending. Melancholy because this meant my relationship with my son was also ending. At least for now. Around mid-afternoon, Michael knocked on my door. I opened it. He was standing there with a box in his hands. Mom, these are yours. They're the photos you found in the trash months ago. I saved them. I thought you'd want them. I took the box. I opened it. There they were. The photos of my husband, of Michael as a child, of our family when we were happy. I looked at them, one by one. I felt a lump in my throat. Thank you, I said, my voice cracking. Michael nodded. He just stood there, as if he wanted to say something else. Finally, he spoke. I know I ruined everything. I know I wasn't the son you deserved. And I know I can probably never fix what I broke, but I want you to know I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. And even though I know it doesn't mean much now, I want you to know that I'm going to try to be better, not for you, because I've already lost that right, but for me, because I don't want to be this man. I don't want to be someone who hurts the people he loves. I looked him in the eyes. There were real tears there, not tears of manipulation, not tears of self-pity, but tears of true remorse. And while a part of me wanted to hug him, another, stronger part kept me firm. I hope you do, Michael, I said calmly. I hope you learn. I hope you grow. And I hope that one day you'll be the man I know you can be. But that's not up to me. It's up to you. He nodded. I know. He wiped his eyes on the back of his hand. I'm leaving now. The truck is almost full. I just wanted to say goodbye. I nodded. Take care, Michael. He turned. He walked to the door. Before leaving, he stopped. He turned back. I love you, Mom. I've always loved you, and I always will. Even if it doesn't seem like it, even though I ruined everything, I love you. And he closed the door. I was left alone in my room, the box of photos in my hands. The tears finally came. I cried in silence. I cried for what was, for what could have been, for what would never be. I cried for my son, for the relationship we had lost, for the time we could never get back. But I also cried with relief, because I was finally free. I could finally breathe. I could finally be myself without fear, without humiliation, without constant pain. Half an hour later, I heard the truck's engine pulling away. I peeked through the window. I saw it disappear around the corner. Michael and Jessica were gone. The apartment was empty, silent. I came out of my room. I walked through the hallways. I went into the living room. It was all deserted. Only the marks on the floor where the furniture had been. Only the holes in the walls where the pictures had hung. Only the echo of what this place once was. I sat on the floor, in the middle of the empty living room, and I took a deep breath. It was mine again. Everything was mine. My space, my peace, my life. That night, I called Sharon. I told her Michael and Jessica were gone. She came over to the apartment with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. We sat on the floor of the living room. We made a toast. To you, Eleanor, she said with a smile. To your courage, to your strength, to your dignity. We clinked glasses, we drank. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled. A real smile. A smile that came from deep inside. Sharon looked at me warmly. And what are you going to do now? I shrugged. I don't know. Maybe I'll sell this place. Maybe I'll move somewhere smaller, somewhere quieter. Maybe I'll travel. Maybe I'll just rest. I don't know yet. But what I do know is that I'm going to live. I'm going to live for me, without sacrificing myself for anyone else, without letting anyone trample me, without ever forgetting this lesson. Sharon nodded. Sounds perfect to me. And when you need company, I'll be here. Thank you, Sharon, I said softly. Thank you for being here, for listening, for not judging me. She took my hand. That's what friends are for, Eleanor. To be there when things get tough, and you were there for me when I needed it. Now it's my turn. We stayed there, sitting on the floor, drinking wine, talking about life, about plans, about the dreams we still had. And I realized something. I wasn't alone. I had never been alone. I had just been blind. Blinded by pain, by the need for family, by the fear of loneliness. But now I saw clearly. I saw that family isn't always blood, that sometimes family is the people you choose, the people who value you, the people who are there when everything falls apart. I spent the next few days cleaning the apartment, patching the walls, painting, making the place feel like a home again, like my home. Sharon helped me. She brought plants. She brought new curtains. She brought life. And little by little, the apartment was transformed. It was no longer the place where I had suffered. It was no longer the place where I had been humiliated. Now it was a new space. A space full of possibilities. A space where I could start from scratch. One afternoon, while I was painting the living room, the phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered cautiously. Hello? On the other end, a man's voice. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes? Yes, this is she. This is David Ramirez. I have some news. Michael and Jessica tried to open a new bank account last week, but when the credit check came back, they discovered they have unpaid debts. Debts they had hidden. Apparently, Jessica had taken out several loans in both their names without Michael's full knowledge. Now they're in a complicated situation, very complicated. I was quiet, processing the information. How complicated? David sighed. They owe around $20,000 between credit cards and personal loans. And with no stable income, no access to their old accounts, they're going to have trouble paying it. They'll probably end up in collections. Maybe even face lawsuits. I closed my eyes. A part of me felt satisfaction, justice, karma. But another part felt sadness. Sadness that my son was sinking deeper and deeper. Sadness that the choices he had made were destroying him. "Thank you for letting me know," I said finally. "Of course, Mrs. Hayes. I just wanted you to be aware. If you need anything else, don't hesitate to call." I hung up. I stood in the middle of the living room with the paintbrush in my hand. I thought about Michael, about how he had come to this, about how he had let Jessica manipulate him, about how he had lost everything by following someone who clearly didn't have his best interests at heart. And I wondered if he would ever wake up, if he would ever see the truth, if he would ever have the courage to take control of his own life. I didn't know. And honestly, it wasn't my responsibility anymore. He was an adult. He had made his decisions. And now he had to live with them. That night, before bed, I took out the box of photos. I looked at one in particular. It was Michael when he was 5 years old. He was in the park, smiling, with ice cream on his face. I was behind him, hugging him. We were both happy. We were both innocent. I ran my finger over the image, and I wondered at what point it had all gone so wrong. At what point that sweet boy had turned into the man who threw me out. Maybe I would never know. Maybe it didn't matter. What mattered was that I had survived. I had come out on the other side, and while I had scars, while I had wounds, I was still standing, still breathing, still living. And that was enough. For now, that was more than enough. 2 months passed since Michael and Jessica left. 2 months in which I heard nothing from them. They didn't call, they didn't write, they didn't show up. And I didn't try to find out about them either. I needed that silence. I needed that distance. I needed to heal without anything constantly reminding me of the pain. The apartment was completely different now. The walls were painted a soft cream color. There were plants in every corner. There were new curtains that let in the morning light. There was peace. A peace I hadn't felt in years. I woke up every day without fear, without anxiety, without that tightness in my chest that had been my companion when they lived here. Now there was only silence. And the silence was beautiful. Sharon became my constant companion. We had breakfast together twice a week. We went to the park. We watched movies. We laughed. We talked about everything and nothing. She told me about her children who lived in another city, about her grandkids who came to visit. And I told her about my plans, about how I was considering selling the apartment, about how I wanted to buy something smaller near the ocean. Somewhere I could wake up to the sound of the waves. Somewhere I could spend my last years in calm. Sharon always supported me. She always told me I deserved that and more. And I believed her. For the first time in a long time, I believed myself when I thought I deserved something good. One afternoon, while I was at the grocery store buying vegetables, I felt someone watching me. I looked up. A few feet away stood Jessica. She looked different, thinner, paler. She had deep, dark circles under her eyes. Her clothes were wrinkled. We looked at each other for an eternal moment. Neither of us moved. Finally, she looked down and turned away. She disappeared between the aisles. I stood there, vegetables in hand, feeling my heart beat fast. I hadn't expected to see her. I wasn't prepared for that encounter. But at the same time, I felt something strange. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel hatred. I just felt a deep sadness. A sadness for her, for how far she had fallen, for how her pride had led her to this. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about Jessica, about how she looked, about what it meant. The next day, I called David. I need you to look into something. I want to know how Michael and Jessica are doing. Where are they living? How are they surviving? I'm not going to do anything with the information. I just need to know. David was quiet for a few seconds. Are you sure, Mrs. Hayes? Yes, I replied. I'm sure. All right. I'll have information for you in 2 days. 2 days later, David called me. What I found isn't pretty, Eleanor. They're living in a small apartment in the industrial park. It's a rough area. Dangerous. Michael is working in a warehouse, loading boxes. He's making very little. Jessica hasn't found a job yet. They're living day to day. The debts are still piling up. Collectors are calling them constantly. And from what I could find out, their relationship is in crisis. They fight all the time. Jessica blames him. He blames her. It's a disaster. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. Are they okay, health-wise? David hesitated. Michael is physically fine. But he looks exhausted, emotionally destroyed. Apparently, Jessica has been sick. Nothing serious, but she's not taking care of herself. Not eating well, not sleeping well. They're surviving, Eleanor, but just barely. Thank you for the information, I said softly. I hung up. I sat on the sofa. I looked out the window. The sun was setting. The sky was painted orange and pink. And I felt empty. Empty of rage, empty of satisfaction, empty even of sadness. There was just a hole. A hole where my son used to be. A hole where my family used to be. And I wondered if that hole would ever be filled with something. Or if I would just learn to live with it. That night, I dreamed of Michael. He was a child again, running through the park, chasing pigeons. I was following him, laughing. He would fall. I'd pick him up. I'd hug him. I'd clean his knees. I'd tell him everything would be okay, that I'd always be there. But then the dream would change. Michael would grow up. He'd walk away. I'd call his name, but he wouldn't turn around. He'd walk into a deep darkness, and I'd be left behind, screaming his name, unable to reach him. I woke up with tears in my eyes. It was the middle of the night. I got up. I went to the kitchen. I made tea. I sat by the window, and I cried. I cried for my son, for the boy he was, for the man he became, for everything we could have been and never were. The next morning, Sharon came for breakfast. She noticed my swollen eyes. What happened, Eleanor? I told her about seeing Jessica at the store, about David's call, about how Michael was living. Sharon listened in silence. When I finished, she took my hand. And what are you going to do? I don't know, I answered honestly. A part of me wants to help him, wants to send him money, wants to make sure he at least has food. But another part tells me I shouldn't, that if I do, he'll never learn, that he'll fall back into the same patterns, that Jessica will manipulate him again, and that all of this will have been for nothing. Sharon nodded. You're right on both counts. He's your son. It's natural to want to protect him, but he's also an adult, and adults have to learn from their mistakes. You have to decide what's more important to you, your peace, or his immediate well-being. I spent the next few days thinking, analyzing, trying to find the right answer. But there wasn't one. There was no right answer. There were only choices. Difficult choices. Choices that hurt, no matter which one I picked. Finally, I made a decision. I called David. I want you to get something to Michael, without him knowing it's from me. What is it? He asked. $1,000 in cash. And a letter. What should the letter say? I'll write it myself. Just make sure it gets into his hands. Not Jessica's. Only his. That afternoon, I sat down to write. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, choosing the right words. The words I needed to say without opening my heart too much, without giving false hope, without letting him think all was forgiven. I wrote and erased, until finally it was ready. Michael, this money is so you can eat this month, so you can breathe a little. It's not a gift. It's not forgiveness. It's just help. Help because even though you hurt me, even though you broke my heart, you are still my son. and I can't watch you suffer and do nothing. But this is it. There won't be any more. You have to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. You have to learn to make the right decisions. You have to learn to see people for who they really are, not for who you want them to be. I hope one day you grow up, that you mature, that you become the man I know you can be. But that path is yours to walk, not mine. I've already done my part. Now it's up to you. Take care of yourself. Mom. I sealed the letter. I gave it to David. He promised to deliver it personally, and I was left with the feeling that I had done the right thing, or at least the best I could. A week later, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't have saved, but I recognized it immediately. It was Michael. I answered, my heart pounding. Hello? Mom. His voice was broken. Thank you. Thank you for the money. Thank you for the letter. I don't deserve your help. I don't deserve anything. But thank you. I stayed silent. I didn't know what to say. I know I can't ask you to forgive me, he continued. I know I ruined everything. But I want you to know that I think about what I did every single day. I regret it every single day. And I'm trying to be better every single day. Not for you, because I don't have that right anymore. But for me, because I don't want to be that man. I don't want to be someone who hurts the people he loves. I took a deep breath. I'm glad to hear that, Michael, I said finally. I really am. But words aren't enough. Actions are what count. So don't tell me you're going to change. Just change. Live it. And maybe someday, when you're truly a different man, we can talk. But until then, I need my distance. I need my peace. I understand, he said, his voice choked. I love you, Mom. I've always loved you. I know, I replied. And I love you too. But loving isn't always enough. Sometimes love needs boundaries. It needs distance. It needs time. I hung up before he could answer. Before I could break down, I sat there with the phone in my hand. Tears were streaming down my face. But this time, they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of release. Tears of acceptance. Tears of peace. 6 more months passed. 6 months in which my life was completely transformed. I sold the apartment for a good price. I bought a small house near the beach, just as I had dreamed. It was a simple place, with 2 bedrooms, a large kitchen with windows that looked out at the ocean, and a small garden where I planted roses and lavender. Every morning, I woke up to the sound of the waves. Every afternoon, I walked barefoot in the sand. Every night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and looked at the stars. It was a quiet life, a simple life, but it was mine, completely mine. Sharon visited me every other weekend. She'd stay for the weekend. We'd cook together, we'd watch old movies, we'd laugh until our stomachs hurt. She said I looked younger, more alive, freer, and she was right. I felt reborn, as if the last few years had just been a bad dream and I had finally woken up. I was finally myself again, the woman I had been before I got lost in the role of the sacrificial mother, the woman who knew how to laugh, who knew how to enjoy life, who knew how to live without carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. One day, while I was watering the plants in the garden, a car pulled up in front of my house. It was an old car, the paint faded. Michael got out of the driver's seat. He looked different, thinner, but in a healthy way. His hair was shorter. He was wearing simple, clean clothes. He stood by the car, looking at me nervously. I set the hose down on the grass. I dried my hands on my apron, and I waited. I waited for him to say something, for him to take the first step. "Hi, Mom," he said finally, his voice trembling. "I know I shouldn't have come without calling. I know I don't have the right. But I needed to see you. I needed to tell you some things." I watched him in silence. Part of me wanted to run to him, to hug him, to tell him everything was okay. But another part, the part that had learned its lesson, kept me firm. "All right," I said calmly. "You can talk." Michael took a deep breath. "I left Jessica 3 months ago. It was the hardest decision I've ever made, but also the most necessary. I realized she wasn't good for me, that she never was, that she manipulated me, that she used me, and that I let her because it was easier than confronting her. But not anymore. I'm not going to live like that anymore. I'm living on my own now. I have a better job. It's not much, but it's honest. And I'm paying off the debts, little by little. It's going to take me years, but I'm going to do it. I also started therapy. I needed to understand why I let things get so bad, why I hurt you so much. And I'm learning. I'm growing. I'm not the same man I was a year ago. And while I know that doesn't erase what I did, I want you to know that I'm trying. I'm really trying. I heard every word. I saw the sincerity in his eyes. I saw the exhaustion. I saw the effort. And something inside me softened. Just a little. I'm glad to hear that, Michael, I said finally. I really am. But I need you to understand something. I've changed, too. I'm not the mother who forgives everything, no matter what. I'm not the woman who sacrifices herself until she disappears. I have boundaries now. I have peace. And I'm not going to let anything or anyone take that away from me. So if you want to have a relationship with me, it has to be different. It has to be built on respect, on honesty, on mutual effort. Do you understand that? He nodded, tears in his eyes. Yes, Mom, I understand. And I respect that. I didn't come here expecting you to forgive me right away. I just came to tell you I'm sorry, that I'm working on being better, and that if, one day, you decide to give me another chance, I'll do everything I can not to disappoint you. But if you decide you don't want to see me again, I'll understand that too, because I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I just want you to know that I love you, that I've always loved you, and that I'll never stop regretting what I did. I walked over slowly. I stood in front of him. I looked him in the eyes, and I saw my son. Not the man who had hurt me, but the boy I had held in my arms. The teenager I had comforted through his first heartbreak. The young man who had dreamed of doing great things. And I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild something. Not what we had before. That was broken forever. But something new. Something stronger. Something based on truth and respect. I don't forgive you yet, I said, my voice firm but soft. Forgiveness takes time. It takes effort. It takes proof that you've really changed. But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to give you a chance. One single chance. If you waste it, if you hurt me again, if you show me your words are just words, then it's over. For good. Is that clear? He nodded quickly. Yes. Crystal clear. I won't let you down, Mom, I promise. All right, I said. Then let's start over. Slowly. No expectations, no pressure. Just two people trying to get to know each other again. Michael smiled. A small, shy, but genuine smile. I'd like that. I'd like that a lot. I pointed to the garden. Do you want to help me finish watering the plants? He nodded. Sure. I'd love to. We worked together in silence for an hour. We didn't talk much. It wasn't necessary. Just being there, doing something simple, was enough. It was a start. A small, fragile start, but a start nonetheless. When we finished, I made fresh lemonade. We sat on the porch. We watched the ocean. The sun was setting. The sky was turning brilliant colors. Michael broke the silence. This place is beautiful, Mom. It's perfect for you. I smiled. Thank you. It's my sanctuary, my peaceful place. He nodded. I'm glad you found it. You deserve it. We sat in silence again. But this time, it wasn't an awkward silence. It was a calm silence. A silence full of possibilities. Michael stayed until it got dark. Before he left, he hugged me. It was a hesitant hug at first, but then it grew stronger, more real. And I let myself return it. I let myself feel that hug. I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, my son had come back. Or at least, he was on his way. Thank you for giving me this chance, he whispered. I won't waste it. I hope not, I replied. Now, go. Drive safe. He nodded. I'll call you next week. Okay. I watched him get in the car. I watched him drive away down the dirt road. And I stood on the porch, my heart full of contradictory emotions. Fear, hope, sadness, joy. all mixed in a whirlwind I couldn't control. That night, before bed, I took out the box of photos. I looked at the picture of Michael as a child, the same one I had looked at so many times. But this time, instead of sadness, I felt something different. I felt gratitude. Gratitude that despite everything, despite the pain, despite the wounds, I had survived. I had come out on the other side, and I hadn't just survived, I had flourished. I had found my strength. I had found my peace. I had found my voice. And no one, ever again, would take it from me. I closed the box. I put it away in the closet. I didn't need to hold on to the past anymore. I didn't need to cry for what was. Now I could look forward. Now I could live in the present. Now I could build a future that was mine. A future where I was in charge, where I made the choices, where I was the protagonist of my own story. I got into bed. I closed my eyes. I listened to the sound of the waves in the distance, and I smiled, a quiet smile, a peaceful smile, because I finally understood something. Life doesn't always ask for revenge. It doesn't always ask for justice. Sometimes it simply gives you silence. It gives you distance. It gives you the chance to start over. And when you get to that point, when you get to that place of calm after the storm, you realize that you don't need anything else. You just need to be at peace with yourself. And I finally was. I had finally found my peace. And no one, absolutely no one, would ever take it from me again.